Scheme. It's a word that's thrown around all the time in football, but what does it mean for Michigan State football's run game next year and their defense under Joe Rossi? We got the one, the only Al Karsten to talk about it all. Let's go.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of Locked On Spartans is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On Spartans, your team in green and white 5 days a week. Please rate, review, subscribe, comment below on YouTube how you're feeling about the run game improvements coming up this season. Or hit us up, lockedonspartans@gmail.com. And yes, if you're watching on YouTube, I am still chained to the American Girl accessories that are behind me in my in-laws basement as we have a house little renovation going on over here. But enough about my life. Let's talk about the lives of all the listeners and the viewers because, man, we are blessed with great guests on this show all the time. People are very generous with their knowledge and their time. Holy crap, do we have quite a contest for the gold medal of most requested host to return. It's the one, the only Al Karsten. Al, people cannot get enough of you, man. With that said, how are we doing now that we just buttered your biscuit a little bit? We doing okay?
Ooh, besides blushing, what is up? Matt Hannibal Lecter, you friggin' psycho with that intro. My goodness, I don't know. I'm jazzed to kind of start talking through the differences between what we were shackled to with our televisions last year and what we get to jump out of our friggin' couches with in the 2024 run game.
That's, you just painted that picture brilliantly. As if, averaging just a shade under 16 points a game wasn't bad enough last year. It was no picnic here in the run game. We were not frolicking through the daisies, and Nate Carter rarely ever found the end zone. But look, we're going to break it down. Mostly you, Al, because you're the brains on this podcast. I mean, let's not get it twisted here. But we're going to look through the differences of UK last year, and then what can we expect under Brian Lindgren this run game this year? And there are some stats that I just want to pull out from J. Bud Davis. He's a great follow on Twitter, just like Al is, okay, at footballguy_Al. But J. Bud Davis, he pointed out that Oregon State last year did zone blocking on their runs 86% of the time. That is 15% higher than national average. And they did outside runs 72% of the time. That is 17% higher than the average. Just for context, Michigan State did that 20% less. They ran outside 52% of the time last season. So a lot more outside run, a lot more zone runs. Al, is there a more layman's term to break all of that down? Like, what is the biggest difference we can expect with the run game from last year's anemic offense to this year coming up?
Yep. And I think there are three big differences. And while Michigan State last year was still over 60% zone run, they were more of a zone run team than gap blocking. There's going to be a major difference. And I actually think it starts at the point of our attack with our pivot man, the lead of our battering ram rushing attack. And that is Tanner Miller. And I got to tell you, I'm prone to overexcitement at times with news, stats, and sometimes I need to reset when I rewatch the film. But I heard about Tanner Miller, and he was a former walk-on that Jim Mahalzek spotted because of his grit and chip on his shoulder at a Cal Lutheran camp. And, like you were saying last week that, he's a square. He's built like a loaded ravioli. Yes. So I don't know if I was getting overly excited about a former walk. I mean, I was pumped for any upgrades in the offensive line. But for a guy that was only, 6'1", 290, he didn't have much on me. Right. Only 14 career starts, bumped around. It seemed like maybe he was a more utility offensive lineman. And I know I saw that there was that, 80.3 run blocking grade, which was the third best among all Power 5 guards last year. All right. So that got me going. I'm like, what kind of freaking player is this? So I turned on the tape and I had to run and close the blinds. I didn't want to see my neighbors see me what I was watching. I had to ask my wife if I could keep watching without her. But no, for real, this of all the guys I've watched so far of our incoming players, I couldn't have been more pleased with the outcome of that he is going to be an NFL player. He's going to be someone that multiple NFL offensive line coaches are pounding the table for early day 4 because of his versatility at those interior offensive line positions, and because his versatility with the crazy run schemes that Smitty and Lindgren dial up. But I got to say, I was surprised at his size to be unearthing nose tackles in the run game on man scheme, on duo, on zone, or not zone, sorry, on duo blocking, man scheme, unearthing big Pac-12 300+ pound nose tackles that are supposed to, take up double teams. He's able to solo block them and drive them out better than I had anticipated on runs up the middle. Then when we're talking about runs to the outside, the two biggest things with his is his ability to do combo blocks with the guard next to him or the weak side guard and climb to that backer, make sure there's movement with that 3 technique and be able to get a cutback. Like there was a lot of cutback lanes, the way he was able to seal it. But I think his number one asset is his ability to, like a lightning bolt, efficiently get to the linebacker some of the times.
Yeah.
Guard has it covered. He is able to scrape so quick that the linebacker isn't able to pursue. So while it's an outside run, outside zone, the linebacker's not able to scrape. He's not able to pursue. And him grabbing the mic, sometimes there's the will or the weak side safety that gets caught up in traffic. And that's essentially taking out 2 people. So we have a rushing lane on the outside. So he is clearing that runway. And he's pretty solid in pass pro, but from a run standpoint, his ability to get to the linebackers quickly, swiftly, lock them down, and he has good agility, good hips at the second level. That it's going to be, and this is no disrespect to Samac or Duplain because they didn't get to play in this run.
Sure.
It's totally different. But I think there's going to be improved play at the pivot this year. That's my biggest first takeaway.
I mean, just going back and watching the Oregon State film last year, it's like, I'm watching the runs, and then it's like, okay, well, where's Tanner Miller? Where's our guy that's coming to Michigan State here? Okay, where's he on the line? Oh, he's already like 7 yards upfield before anyone else is. Like, oh, my man's mobile over here. So yes, the loaded ravioli, as you called it, he's got a little bit of get up to him, which is only going to play here. So, I mean, that perfectly matches that 80 run grade that he got from PFF.
That caught me off guard, and I think he's the key to getting explosives because that's the way you sustain drives right now.
Yep.
A lot of teams playing those 2 high safeties back there. You can't get as many explosives passing. Let's get chunk run plays. I mean, you see it with the Lions and Jahmyr Gibbs. This is just a way to try and you need an explosive play to get a touchdown drive. So let's be honest.
And observation number 2 with this run game, because I like that's a great start right there. I mean, we're talking interior offensive line. We're revving the engines right now, Al. What do you got for number 2?
Wanted to lead off with that, and so that maybe I'll start to call myself because this one is pretty easy, and it is going from Jay Johnson to Jonathan Smith and Brian Lindgren. It is the play calling and the play design, the play structure, the play build, everything that goes into a cohesive offensive game plan and the rushing attack. It's going to be a variety of plays, inside zone, outside zone, but there also is some trap, counter, wham. There's duo, there's power. They do a lot of different things, and they also vary the formations. So formationally, from a play design standpoint, how will these plays be married to each other and set up other plays? So the defense is constantly in a bind. I think last year we were just kind of calling plays to call plays. We had these plays. They weren't tied to each other. They weren't married to each other. They weren't with the intention of making the defense wonder what play this was and hesitate for a second. So I think the play design and the way that they cadence the plays together is something that is going to really benefit everyone on our offense and make life miserable for a lot of defense coordinators in the Big Ten. We're no longer as static. I think we are going to use not just motion. You can say static, but obviously motions are part of NFL today. But static as far as the way we're going to leverage our blocks. So the ability to put the H back or the tight end and make him be a cross buck. Like, how are we leveraging the different motions, the pageantry going on after snap to try and ensure we have the best leverage on the defensive players to try and create an alley. And he will use window dressing though. Like they will, it's a lot of it is just, they won't know what play we're running, as opposed to last year, everyone knew from their couches what play we are running. It's just a lot less predictable, and that includes situations and trends from game to game, week to week. It's just going to be a refreshed game plan every week, and I'm really excited to watch.
Yeah, hopefully there's somewhat of a thread here with the play calling, because I just like you said, it just felt like calling plays to call plays. It reminded me of back in the college days when I'd be 9-10 beers deep playing Madden, and I'm just clicking the first play I see because, oh boy, things are getting away from me quite fast.
It's the 3 suggested plays, and
yes,
plus
exactly.
with the plays married together with the passing game will make rushing easier. We didn't have as improved of a passing game after.
Not quite. Yeah. You got that right. So we still got a little bit more run game to talk about, and then we're going to flip sides of the field, talk about Joe Rossi, what he's going to bring to the table. But Al, no one's going to like what I'm about to do right now. I'm going to send you to the bench because I got to talk to people's ears off about Gametime, my favorite ticketing app out there. Guys, let's say that you're going to go to a concert, a comedy show, theatrical performance, or hey, sports fans, a sporting event. Yeah, if it's a ticketed event, you will find it at Gametime, and you will save that money. Whether it's their flash deals that go on during the week leading up to the game, or hey, maybe it's the last minute ticket deals that happen when you're walking up to the venue itself. Gametime is going to give you some of the best, if not the best deals out there in the ticketing game. And one of the reasons I love Gametime is that we all know the ticketing apps out there that, oh, great, $20 tickets. That's awesome. Click, 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 click. You click 15 times, and all of a sudden at the very end, what's this $18 fee all about? Why are these tickets $38? No, not with Gametime. They are up front. It is 2 taps to get your tickets, and they're just sent straight to your phone. So start saving money right off the bat. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. It's last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. And the one, the only Al Karsten back into the mix here. Al, we've talked linemen. We've talked that play calling might even help and make sense this year, and that we could disguise, and it won't be predictable. And that's a really good start here for a run game that was quite atrocious last year. So what do we got for number 3 here, Al?
3 is going to be on a similar sentiment as the 2 combined, and it's Jim Mahalczyk and the other offensive coaches. So I'll get into Brian Wozniak and Keith Bonofa to some degree, but Jim Mahalczyk, and I was thinking about it more listening to your interview with Dante Rosano, and you could just tell there was a sentiment of the coaches were responsible, not just for special teams, but a lot of the failures of the scheme of the execution previous years. And I just think Jim Mahalczyk and his track record, he's multiple first-round picks with Alex Mack and now Tali Fuaga, and he is, I think, right before we signed him, the Seattle Times writer had said he was the best position coach in the Pac-12.
Yeah,
and that really got me going the more I looked into him. So I think he is going to, work in unison with both Lindgren and Smith in this play design. I think he has some say in some of the run game aspect, but he's going to maximize our players. He's going to make sure that they're able to have the best leverage on the run blocking schemes, and he's going to get the best 5 out there. And I know it's going to be Miller and Newman at a position, but between Baldwin, Dooley, Lepo, Fincher, Brocious, Rammel, and hopefully Dellinger, we'll figure it out. He's going to get I kind of trust him, and it'll continue to get better moving forward. So with him improving our offensive line and just getting defenders on skates again and getting more than a yard of before contact for our running backs, for Nate Carter, he's getting hit in the backfield nonstop. Let him and Kieran Lynch-Adams eat. And same thing with Brian Wozniak. He is a really well-respected tight ends coach. That kind of goes back to what you're saying at the very beginning, to put a button on it, is we are going to use Jack Velling and Masunas and Parachek in a lot of different varied ways where they're not just lining up as a Y and they're blocking right in front of them. No, they're going to crack back. They're going to cross buck. They might be an H-back that's leading every once in a while and kicking out the defensive end or the Will or the Sam. There's just a lot of different variations of them utilizing the angles. So these offensive linemen and these tight ends are going to be better off for being part of this offense, being coached by some of these assistants.
I'm fired up. I need kickoff to happen like tomorrow. I just need to see it in action, because all this sounds so promising.
And it's going to keep getting better. By November,
yeah,
you and I are going to have the best November we've had in 3 years,
yes,
even longer.
Oh, let's hope everyone's healthy by November for the first time in seemingly 15 years. That would be delightful. Otherwise, me and you are going to be playing offensive line this year. And I'm not, I don't want to. I'm not physically built for that, whether it be stature or cardio. I can't do it, Al. I just simply can't do it. Nor can I break down defense as good as you. Let's flip to that side of the ball here, because that's another thing Michigan State needs drastic improvement on. I don't even have stats written in front of me right now for this. So if you want to go ahead, set this table here for our defensive chat here, Al. Look at me just making the guests do the work over here, but take it away, my man.
No, I've watched 4 or 5 games now of Minnesota the last 4 or 5 years. And it's really interesting that Joe Rossi is a defensive coordinator working with an all-new defensive staff. So I'm glad we got the spring past us. But he was someone we were willing to pay $1.5 million per year, top paid assistant. And I really do like 2 things, quotes recently or from Rossi. One, Jonathan Smith talked about how he has autonomy on that side of the ball. He trusts him. He hired him to do a job, he said, and I trust him to do that job. And one of the, if you keep picking up on some of the quotes from Rossi, he likes when his guys play fast, and that's what you want to hear. You want to play fast. You want to play with a clear mind. So that takes good coaching, but also he talks about how, since his days at Rutgers and probably earlier at Maine, he's learned that you want to play to your position strengths. That's all you want to hear. I think we all know by now the best football is played when you put your players in a position to succeed.
Yep.
So he's not married to a formation. I think I wanted to look up last spring. He had a quote before their practice, and he had mentioned with Minnesota, you've got to tailor what you do to the strengths and weaknesses of your defense. That's going to be a constant evaluation this spring is what are we good at? What are we not? Let's lean towards the things we're good at. Let's kind of shy away from the things we're not. Is it going to look exactly the same as Minnesota? No, because every year there it is. It's kind of tweaked a little bit too based on what we had. So he's willing to adapt, play those guys' strengths. That's all I want to hear.
How about that? Yeah, that's great. You can do that at places. Huh.
So what our defense looks like this year will probably be different than what it looks like in a year from now. But he's going to play with the crew he has in year one. And I trust him there. And he was named before the season Bruce Feldman's top assistants to watch. He was the 8th best assistant on there by Ryan Grubb, the Washington offense coordinator, Sharon Moore, who now is a head coach, Brian Hartline, and he was called the best kept secret in football. So I think after this year, he's no longer going to be a secret in football, especially with the ability where he's going to play complementary football with our offense. And he's a guy, he's Western Pennsylvania native. I like that he's well-rounded. When he was at Maine, he was a special teams coordinator. He was a DB's coach, a linebacker coach, in addition to DC. And then at Rutgers, when he was DC, he also spent time as a safeties coach. At Minnesota, he started as quality control, then defensive line coach. This guy knows how to coach every position. He can jump around from every position group, and he knows what he's teaching. So that also helps with some of the newer assistants. I mean, we know in his 2018 Minnesota defense, they were giving up over 30 points per game and over 400 yards per game before Fleck had to fire the defensive coordinator after they gave up 55 to Illinois. And what happened after they gave Rossi the job? A disastrous defense. 4 games left in the season, and they went from averaging 31 points to 14 per game, from 423 yards to 300. And then we saw in 2021 and 2022, finally when after COVID and everything, he had back-to-back top 10 defenses in both points and yards allowed. And during his tenure with the Gophers, he had at least 10 draft picks. He had Boy Mafe going to the Seahawks, Antoine Winfield, who is now the highest paid defensive back in all of football. And even he had Jack Gibbons, who was a linebacker for them for a few years. He's now went from undrafted free agent to 3 years later. He's going to be wearing the green dot for the Tennessee Titans defense. So he gets a lot of the most out of his players on defense as well. He makes them smart. But all right, I wanted to get in a little bit to more scheme formation. I wanted to give a little background. What gets me excited when I wake up in the morning.
Let's do it.
So he runs a lot of 4-3 defenses or nickel 4-man fronts, but one of the defensive end is a rush end. So it's a lot of six-man boxes.
Yep.
The rush end, and you and I won't be able to figure this out because they are not stagnant with their defense, with which side the rush end is on. They'll run 4-man fronts with the over, where the 3 technique, the primary pass rushing defense tackle, is to the strong side. Then they'll run under, and sometimes they'll do a pinch, or they'll tilt that 3 technique and pinch them inside next to the nose. They just are constantly moving those 4 guys on base downs, on early downs, and they'll play some 3 safety nickel, where there's a third safety in, and the safety roles are pretty interchangeable, and we know we have at least 3 talented safeties, so I'm excited for that. And he's not afraid to then on some of his tendencies. Okay, let's talk third down.
Showtime. Okay. You mind if I introduce some stats here? Because third down defense last year wasn't great for Minnesota. It was 118th in the country, but Michigan State didn't get that memo when they played the Gophers last year, because MSU only went 4-13 against the Gophers. So just about the only team they did good against. However, that wasn't Rossi's only year at Minnesota. The year before that, 11th in the country at third down percentage. And then the year before that, 20th in the country. So Rossi has shown a great track record of third down defense. Just wanted to blurt those out before you keep rolling with the third down calls here.
Yes. So, and last year he lost 7 starters from the previous year. And obviously the Minnesota offense had their worst year in quite some time. So those were definitely factors. But
the defense was living on the field for them. Yeah, not ideal.
Living. Yep. And again, if you're losing time possession, then you're not able to stop the run as well. And then you're having shorter third downs. When they get third and long, third and medium, he will really, it's my favorite thing for a defense coordinator to do. He will mess with the offensive line and the quarterback and make them think pre-snap and make them think post-snap. It is not predictable. They don't know what the play call is. Last year, we saw in previous years on defense, Washington, Ohio State, they knew exactly what was happening before they snapped the ball. On third downs, he will go to a lot of 3-3 stack fronts, or just 3 down fronts, and it's a thing of beauty. It is just throwing paint on the wall. It is 6 to 7 guys on the line of scrimmage, oftentimes linebackers, safeties, not a lot of the big heavies in there, sometimes the rush end, and they kind of will rotate the coverage responsibility. They will rush 3 to 4, and they will drop another of the 2 to 3, the safety, the linebacker, and make them the middle defenders or the man defenders of the tight end or the slot wide receiver. And they're constantly moving. They are looping, they're slanting, they're delayed blitzing. It's a lot of things that the offensive line has to communicate, make the other team communicate. We did not stress communication on the offensive line, which is where you get the mental errors and communication errors. So it's led to a lot of bad balls from the quarterback being on his backside. And I'm really excited for Joe Rossi's third down deployment.
You had a lot of great clips on that on Twitter too. I mean, unfortunately, they were against Michigan State, confusing to Caden Hauser, a young quarterback. But sticking with Twitter right now, we have another great guest that joins the show time and time again. His name is Maxwell Klitsky. He tweeted this out. Michigan State is facing a first-year starter or first year with their new team at quarterback roughly 2/3 of the season. So just making life as confusing as possible can only help, right? That just sounds so obvious and so basic, but that is truly something to look forward to, is that the false fronts that these guys are going to be looking at here.
I regretted almost tweeting all these things for Max, the ball shagger of the year, because it was already a bullet point in my Word document to talk about the new quarterbacks in the Big Ten. It was one of those moments where, Max, you're great on Spartan Twitter. I'm doing something. 55 burgers, 55 fries. Excuse me, don't I'm
on a roll right now, man.
I know. I was gonna give Max credit on the show, because I still wanted to talk about that, and that's how we're going to win games in September and November against some of the non-elite offenses, is with our ability to completely confuse them on third down and make the quarterbacks make mistakes, make the offensive line make mistakes, which leads to turnovers. So I'm really excited about that. And just in general, he is constantly bringing someone else. I don't know if it's the nickel or it's the safety or the linebacker or who's dropping where, if it's the rush end. It's really interesting that you're not going to get the same look more than twice on the third down in a game.
Yeah. And you know what, just to borrow actually something that, your top guy said, Dan Campbell. Look, I'm a Lions fan, but in comparison to you, I seem like a fair-weathered, fan. You bleed silver and blue over there. But this is a quote that Dan Campbell had not too long ago. It's that, I'm paraphrasing here, but sacks are overrated. It's all about the pressures. Can you throw the other team off schedule a little bit? And Minnesota, you go back and you look at their sack percentages the last few years, rarely is it in the top 70 in the nation. I mean, there was one year it was behind, the top 100, but that was still one of their best defensive years. I think it goes hand in hand with how much you're confusing the offensive line. It isn't just the quarterback, but just like you said, the communication with the offensive line. All right, great. I got this rush edge in front of me. And why is he dropping back into coverage? And who's the safety that's coming my way? And why is he behind me right now chasing after a quarterback? So that was a good debate that a lot of people were having on, football Twitter is that accurate what Dan Campbell said? Is it not? Joe Rossi's defense, a good piece of evidence here the last few years, of course, throughout last year with all the new starters and everything. But hey, pressures based on confusion can just do as good as a sack here in many cases here. So just had to blend the Dan Campbell talk with
anytime. No, that was a perfect example of it. Because havoc will lead to misexecution.
Yeah.
Even if you're not sacking for 9 yards past the line of scrimmage. I'm big on that.
Absolutely. And there's one more piece that you wanted to get to. Again, not only are you great on the show talking, breaking it all down, but you just come with material. You say, hey, I want to talk about Wayne Matthews. And we've been talking up and down about Wayne Matthews. He is the pass coverage linebacker. Hey, Al, did you hear that this guy can really defend the pass as a linebacker? That is all the rage about this guy. Pro Football Focus thinks so. We think so. But what has got the twinkle in your eye about Wayne Matthews, the Old Dominion transfer?
Yep. So, and I appreciate you having him third on your list of top 5 overall.
I'm high on him. Maybe a little too high, but I'm fired up about him.
So, and I think Chase Glasser came on with you.
Yeah.
Maybe after the Baylor game, because we were both at the Baylor game. So it was a great episode to listen to, right? And he talked about Joe Rossi back in the day. How he puts a lot of stress on his safeties, and he had even listened to a clinic with Joe Rossi talking about how the safeties they do a lot of post-snap coverage changes. We'll have to use a lot of communication. But then the next thing is those linebackers that he puts a lot of responsibility on those linebackers, and he trusts them both in man coverage, picking up a tight end or a slot. So he will often Rossi, who he doesn't have any indication on who is the strong side. The defense is always nickelback could be on the tight end side. Nickelback could be on the trip side. Sometimes that Sam linebacker will be lined up next to the inside most wide receiver on a trips, and he'll have to carry him, and he'll have to carry him on a crosser or whether it's a seam ball. And I think him putting a lot of trust in that Sam linebacker is why we went and got Wayne Matthews early on. We prioritized it because I think he saw what we had, and we need someone who is not going to be a liability over the middle. I think, no offense to Cal Holiday and Angelo Gross, but of course, I think over the last 2 years, because Gross played that middle defender role as well against Washington and against Ohio State and some other teams, they were clearly targeted early and often as coverage liabilities against some of the better teams. So he needs that shutdown seam ball, middle coverage, especially in between the sticks, linebacker. And Wayne, I was watching the JMU game, and if anyone else in Spartan Nation wants to give me some all 22 of any other Old Dominion games, I'd love to freaking watch them. So
yeah,
keep that in mind. Send me film if you have it. But he was flying around the ball. He can get both downhill, sideline to sideline, and he can work backwards. He's really comfortable working backwards and in space, and he's got oily hips for a linebacker. I was trying to look up if he played some safety back in the day or cornerback, because he definitely has natural coverage skills, and I think he'd be a tight end eraser for us. And if we can remove the tight end or the slot middle receiver, that opens up the whole offense. And so I'm really curious of how we rotate the safeties. I'm not sure. One, I think Malik Spencer, wherever he ends up, is going to be utilized. Watching Tyler Newman, he'll be great. Dylan Tatum, I'm so curious where he winds up, because he has a lot of experience everywhere, and I think he can be an asset, even if we put him in that slot. But Nikai Martinez, he had 27 missed tackles, which was second most among all.
Interesting.
Backs.
Okay.
Yes, that I didn't mention on the last one. So I'm a little nervous about making him do too many things. So it might be easier if he plays free safety. Or maybe it's easier if he's just the nickel guy closer to the ball. I just think
just right there, right?
Yeah. So I think it's going to be interesting how those three play out. And I think, what is it? Terrion Smith. Wait, who am I forgetting? The transfer from
Marion Smith is
Marion
that yeah.
He's another guy that can go in there and play free safety, be a
Yeah.
center fielder. So I like that he's available there. But at linebacker, and going back to Angelo Gross and Cal Holiday, they're smart and maybe they'll play reps early, but I think they're going to seed snaps. And we're not going to see him as much in October and November. And I think it's really going to be Jordan Turner kind of being the better version of that Tonka truck who could stop Anthony Thomas and Maurice Claret and all those guys in the early 2000s Big Tens, which I think Cal would be great at. But like, I think Jordan Turner's better at it and more athletic.
Okay.
And Wisconsin blitzed him 150 times in the last 2 seasons. He came up with like 40 pressures. Wow. Jordan Turner, I think, is really good blitzer because we are going to ask our safeties and linebackers to blitz a ton. I really like the idea of Wayne Matthews, Jordan Turner, and obviously Jordan Hall. Like those three, I feel so comfortable with them rotating. So other than the mystery of how we rotate those three in Cal Holiday and how we deploy our safeties is something we're going to have to continue to think on. And maybe that's 2 weeks from now episode is who's going to play that critical rush end position. That stand-up end who has a lot on their plate as well, because he sometimes is playing against tight ends. Sometimes they're against the weak side. They're dropping back a lot, and it's a lot of different mixed coverages. They are covering the flat, they're covering the middle. I'm curious of that, who we're throwing out of that position, because they're going to get a lot of work.
That's what I'm like when I'm watching these former Minnesota games. It's like I knew that the rush edge drops back in the pass coverage. I thought it was more like a little bit like, oh, this is a nice little wrinkle we like to throw in sometimes. No, it happens a considerable amount. So, which it makes it even harder to guess as to what on earth is going to happen if you're on the offensive side of the ball. So, for that, Joe Rossi, we pre-thank you. You have yet to coach a single game here in East Lansing, but I already like what I'm seeing, man. And it really just starts with that quote that you brought up, Al. It's just that he actually coaches around the strength of his players. Look at that. That is a thing you can do in college football, contrary to popular belief. What a beautiful thing, Al, isn't it? It's great. God, the best.
Looking forward to it.
Actually, you know what is the best? Talking with you, Al. This was a sensational chat. As always, breaking it down. Everyone is leaving this chat smarter. And if you listen to 3 more episodes with Al Karsten in the future, should he want to join for at least 3 more episodes, you actually get a master's degree in football. We'll send you a cap and a gown and a nice little degree to put
football
on
guy
fridge.
You, man.
You got it, man. You got it. So, yes, folks, we will be back here. We're going to do a little recruiting primer before the weekend. It won't be a longer episode. It'll just be a shorter one. Go over all the visitors coming up and any other breaking news. We'll get to that too. But, folks, until then, love you all. Go Green.